Black Hills Information Security, the leaders in penetration testing and active defense. Email consulting@blackhillsinfosec.com to request a quote today. Threat Connect is the industry's most widely adopted threat intelligence platform, built to unite the people, processes, and technologies across your security team, your organization, and your entire ecosystem of partners. Threat Connect's threat intelligence platform enables your team to collaborate, analyze, and make sense of threat data all in one place. Empower your team towards fast and efficient analysis that leads to decisive action. Transform your entire threat detection and response program today. Claim your free account at threatconnect.com/securityweekly. Endgame automates the hunt for both known and never-before-seen adversaries and enterprise networks. Built on unique knowledge of the adversary's tools, techniques, and tactics, Endgame's centrally managed agent prevents, detects, and responds to advanced adversaries at the earliest stages of the kill chain without prior knowledge. Endgame, automate the hunt. Welcome back, everyone, to Security Weekly. This is our double-header listener feedback that we're going to do. We're going to jump right into it. Ed writes in, he says, not that long ago, people, in quotes, started hitting some of our WordPress servers fairly hard via XMLRPC.php, and he's taken steps to stop that. Now, he doesn't say what the attacks were or what he did to stop it, but much of the references about that that he's seen are dated, and they come across. So he asks, is there something more to this activity than just a DOS that you know of? In fact, about a year ago, there was an article that I was just reading that reminded me that, in fact, yes, there are attacks against XMLRPC. And from what I understand, and this is something that we read about a while ago and covered on the show, I believe, is that via XMLRPC, like you'll put a plugin on your WordPress site or steps to prevent people from brute forcing via the website portion of it, right? Where the form to log in, essentially, right? So you put steps to prevent that. Now, what that doesn't protect against is using XMLRPC or the API in WordPress to do the brute forcing.
Or to do other things.
Specifically in terms of brute forcing, since you can pack multiple requests in the same request, essentially, you can do a lot more brute forcing with less traffic, and essentially it might look like a denial of service attack. So that's probably my guess, Ed, what you're experiencing is people just trying to brute force their way into your WordPress server via XMLRPC because they can put multiple requests inside of a single request.
And so I had this actually happen. I run a WordPress site, and you remember we were having this conversation as your WordPress site won't get hacked if you don't run any plugins and all that type of stuff?
Yeah, your WordPress site won't get hacked if you don't run WordPress.
But so I run a WordPress site. And believe it or not, it hasn't gotten hacked because it doesn't run any plugins. And
I think the reason Adrian just choked on himself is because one of the lesser talked about, everyone talks about plugin security or insecurity. One of the lesser known things is inside your theme. There's a ton of code in your theme that can absolutely be exploited. So you could run 0 plugins, but you got to have a theme, and your theme can have all kinds of heinous things.
Absolutely. So to that, I found that I had to share some files with someone. So I uploaded them to my web server, and the comments were, I can't get to them. Your web server times out. Like, really? I've got 100 up, 100 down. What the hell's going on here? So I start looking at it, and sure enough, there's thousands and upon thousands of connections to my Apache web server from all over the place. China, Russia, you name it. I'm like, wow, my website's really popular. No, it's not.
If your website's really popular with Russia and China, probably popular for the wrong reasons, Larry.
Well, turns out that they were, from the best of my knowledge, that they were trying to use XMLRPC to post comment spam to the website and also leverage it to post comment spam to other WordPress sites. Even if it wasn't necessarily legitimate, like trackbacks. So denial of service via trackbacks. But of course, trackbacks and comments are disabled in my version, on my install of WordPress. So it wasn't actually doing anything, and nor did they care. It was, in fact, using up all of the connections that Apache would support. And no matter how many connections I would allow Apache to support, it would just eat them up. So I was just enabling it more. So
so you talk about the trackback thing. That's the one that I've run into in my penetration testing experience, where we can use that as potentially a denial service mechanism.
Yep.
But you wisely had it disabled.
Yeah, but even still, if you have trackbacks disabled, they will still attempt to use it and make enough connections to the server to render your Apache web server useless, even though the trackbacks don't work.
Right.
They just don't care. And that was the case that was happening with my server. And in fact, the only way around it was to actually move the files to the file name security through obscurity, so to speak, that they couldn't find it.
Right. Or I'm actually probably going to do some load balancing stuff. And I'm thinking of just dropping stuff right at the load balancer before it even hits the web server to see.
Oh yeah. Well, you know the WAF can fix everything.
No, not a load balancer, not a WAF.
Well, see that said, I don't have one of those nice fancy load balancers. So,
well, if you deploy in the cloud, Larry, it's software as a service.
But I have in the cloud. I have my own cloud. I have my own private cloud.
If you say in the cloud, you have to drink. If you say big data, you have to drink. If you say cyber, you have to drink.
Oh, the cloud is wonderful.
I have my own private cloud. Thank you very much.
I should say virtual hosting provider if you want the.
Like I said,
it's like embedded device versus IoT.
For like
your virtual hosting provider.
Okay, my virtual hosting provider lives in my basement on a big ass ESX server.
Yeah.
Now there is. I will say.
Come on, raise drink.
Come on. Fine. I will do that.
What's
more geekier than hosting your own cloud?
Option, there is mod security in Apache, which is not half bad. I mean, you can do some things with it. That will help you mitigate some of those issues.
Yep.
It won't mitigate everything, but
my experience with WordPress recently, I had this interesting performance issue with one of our WordPress sites, and
I've heard you had performance issues.
Yes, and there's pharmaceuticals for that. So I was looking into the problem, and some of our pages, I'm like, this doesn't require WordPress, because really, like, no matter what, a lot of things in WordPress, even though it's a static page, even though it's part of a plugin, it's really like a post or a page in the database, which requires a database call to get that content out. And I'm like, I don't want to hit the WordPress ecosystem at all. So I want to take certain URLs and just redirect them to other places and not use WordPress.
Completely static content.
So that's kind of where I'm going with some of the things. But the performance issue I was looking into, I upgraded RAM on the server. I did the database tweaking, Googling, I'm like, I'm going to tweak the database. I'm going to put performance there. I'm going to tweak WordPress. I'm going to do the performance things there. I'm going to put caching plugins in. And like each time I did it, like maybe every like 2 things that I did, I'd see like a little
bit
tiny
of
bit, and I'm like, no, there's like one thing that is making this crap slow. And then we had this announcement plugin on this website, and I'm like, I use there's a Google page speed test thing. It's like a speed test for websites.
And it tells you which components are fast and which is slow.
Do you guys remember what it's called? It tests the speed of your website, and then it gives you recommendations. And anyway, one of them was pointing to the announcements plugin code. And I'm like, well, that's interesting. And I looked in the announcements plugin, and it was like every single announcement that we had ever made on the site was configured in there. And there was like 15 of them. And I'm like, well, we only really need the most recent one. I'm like, I wonder if I delete all those, if that will make a difference. And then I deleted all of them. And now the website is faster than like any other website that I own, because all my other performance things actually matter now. And I'm like, holy crap, this is like the fastest website ever now. And it's like off the charts, blazing fast. And I think the problem was it was making like 15 database calls all at once.
For one.
So speaking to Ed's question with WordPress, like there's weird performance things, like not just security, but performance things like that as well.
Yep. And I hate to say it, WordPress is so I technically manage 2 WordPress sites, one of them for work, but WordPress is actually not exposed to the internet. It's all static content, which is then copied over. It pulls it to static content and then pulls it over to publicly facing. And in the initial setup, and it's weird because all of the WordPress setup points to 127.0.0.1, and one of those things carried over to the external site.
Oops.
And it took me a month to figure out where that one thing was. That was the one thing that was making it slow, was trying to do lookups for that to 127.0.0.1.
All right, so John writes in. He says your shows are totally awesome. Both Security Weekly and Enterprise Weekly are compulsory listening to anyone involved in InfoSec. Thank you very much, John. He says, I'm interested in your approach to the remediation of vulnerabilities found in penetration testing reports from a timescale viewpoint. Every business will have their own risk appetite. It may also be subject to regulatory compliance. There we said it, everyone drank. But for the average enterprise, they are normally presented with categories such as critical, high, medium, and low, and scored against CVSS. Is there a standard formula or industry best practice that sets expectations of time scales?
Oh, he said best practice drink.
Yes, that's another drink. I know.
That's a tough question.
Because I really like John. I love John because he gave us a compliment in the beginning about our shows. There were a couple things there. I won't hog up too much time because I want to hear everyone's take on this, because I'm kind of tired of hearing myself talk about it, having worked in vulnerability management for 7 years.
Wait. You're tired of hearing yourself?
Yes. After doing this for 11 years.
Stop the presses!
There's certain things I'm tired of hearing myself talk about.
Everybody immediately drink.
Defining your own tolerance for risk and defining your own remediation strategy based on severity levels that are derived from your own view of the business and your own view of risk, which I said you should do first, is a thing. And don't utter the words best practices and worry about what everyone else is doing. Worry about what you're going to do for your business.
I will argue that it would be your best practices.
Yes.
And or the organization and or business's best practices.
I always I would advise folks to define one question first off, and that is, what is the data or data
Thanks, Joff.
that you are trying to protect?
Data.
That is not the first question, Joff.
Oh my God!
Yes.
What problem are we trying to solve?
Finally, we found the pull string for Michael. Michael, welcome to the show.
What's the problem we're trying to solve?
I thought he was muted. The whole time.
How tall do you need to be to ride the ride, Michael? Let's go.
We've upgraded that question. But, no,
Okay, Michael, school me, brother.
No, you asked a good question. I saw an opportunity. That's all. No, but I think, actually, oddly enough, now that I did it as a joke, I think it is the right question. Why are you looking? Why are you looking at? And John, we love you, except for you didn't mention the Startup Security Weekly, so you missed your.
Yeah, that's what you got Michael fired up on that one.
But no, but look, I look at this, and we've all had this conversation a bunch, and we've looked at it, and what I thought was kind of interesting was, I'm always curious in what are you trying to measure and why, and who are you presenting it to, and are you getting better?
Yes.
Right? Like it doesn't start at whatever number you start at. Are you getting better, and why? And is that good for you, or is that a waste of your resources? And so that's why why are you trying to measure this? Because someone told you to? I mean, guys,
so hold on, Mike. I'm gonna set this up for you very, very nicely, right? The reason that they're asking for what's the best practice for how long it should take to fix it, and what are the best practices, is likely because they've found vulnerabilities in their environment. They've gone to the asset owner and responsible party. That responsible party has told them, no, I'm not going to fix it. Therefore, the question comes back to us, hey, what's the best practice for how fast people should fix it? When the real problem is something Michael and I have spoken about quite a bit, is you don't have the confidence of others in your organization to communicate to them the risk and make them, and this is a Michael line, right, affect change in your organization so that people actually fix things.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say make, right? I mean, I would say motivate or inspire, but that's
work with your teams to fix it.
What's interesting, though, so hold on. So what I see a lot of times is people get really excited because they're like, oh, I saw this thing on measurement. I went to a conference and I talked about measurement. And I told them that their server had 4,000 high vulnerabilities on it. So here's the other part to it then. Well, how many patches is that? How long does that take to install? Were there any other dependencies on it? How important is that server relative to everything else? And just because you're telling me it's a high priority, well, relative to what?
Yep.
And so if you bring that to the business person and they're looking at you going, wait, I'm sorry. So this is Q4. We're making money hand over fist. And you're telling me I need to shut this thing down for an indeterminate period of time to apply a bunch of stuff to it that may or may not break what I'm trying to do. What? No.
Yeah. Yep.
Thanks for coming by, though. Yep. Have a nice day.
And that's one of the things that we do in Guardians with all of our findings, is that we offer some risk rating to some of that. So, here's the level of risk, and here's the ease in which it can be exploited. Here's the probability that someone would exploit it, to give sort of an overall rating. And it's very subjective based on what time of season the test was conducted in, when we expect them to have when we expect that someone in their industry would have it remediated, having some understanding about what their environment looks like, what their staffing levels look like, what the potential, our perceived risk about what their risk to their environment is. If this is a critical vulnerability on a server in their dev environment that's not directly connected to the internet, that two developers used, then it's still going to be critical, but the probability is probably going to be fairly low.
So when we talk about criticality, the criticality ratings that we reference here, CVSS and other criticality ratings, are relevant to the way that, what an attacker can do with that vulnerability.
And how easy it is.
And what they can do to the software, right? Like whether it's remote access, whether it's local access, privilege escalation. The criticality rating has nothing to do with the impact on your environment.
Business.
Absolutely nothing.
But
it's the impact on the software and what the attacker could do.
Right.
I'm surrounded by smart people, so it's always nice to be the dumb guy. What I've always looked at, too, is, so you've given me the criticality rating based on that, but that doesn't also, so it's not looking at the potential impact in my environment based on what is or isn't on that server, but it's also not necessarily looking at what other controls or mitigations I might have in place in the environment, right?
In our case, it would, but that is
because you know the other controls because you've run into them.
Because we've either
for
run
good, bad, or indifferent, right? You've learned about them.
We've learned about them. We've asked about them.
That's actually not bringing in somebody who's qualified and probably asking some questions up front to say, so when you do the pen test, right, nod to what Adrian just took us through, are you able to look at my environment? Are you able to help me understand it in context, or are you just reading off a script?
Context is king.
Well, and I've always said that I'm sorry, Jeff, hold on. I'll let you go 1 second. The best organizations at vulnerability management have their own internal processes, a lot of times backed by software, that looks at vulnerabilities and takes into account the how easy or difficult it is for the team to patch it, how critical the server is, and all of the mitigating circumstances, adds in all of those factors, and then notifies the team that they have a vulnerability and they're ranked in order of priority with all of that wonderful different areas of context. I'm not saying that's easy to do. That's hard.
It's
hard.
Yeah, no question.
Sorry, Joff, you were saying?
That was the entire point of me asking that question.
Sorry, Joff. You set me off.
What data are you trying to protect?
You jocked me off.
Wow,
Did you say he jacked you off?
Joff me off is a drink.
With a Joff me off 9000 TM. If I ask the question, what data you're trying to protect, what immediately somebody will respond with, typically if they're thinking about it, is these are the most important software assets that protect that key asset that's gold to me and my organization. And so it builds the context around that internal prioritization that an organization needs to achieve in order to map over the industry accepted stuff to what is locally relevant. And that's what matters.
Yep, and sometimes even that context is exposed through multiple vulnerabilities, and that some of them will end up getting a significantly higher quote risk rating or need to be addressed more significantly. Given that if you chain multiple attacks together, this is the old go back to from low to owned. You go to your vulnerability scanner, you go to the low stuff, and next thing you know, you tie 3 of those low ones to a completely
and that blows people's mind when it comes to vulnerability management. They'll present this awesome strategy. I'm like, well, what about if I chain multiple attacks together. And it's like,
boom. Yeah,
mind blown.
exactly.
Yeah.
And knowing context for all of that is hugely important.
So how often
when we're pen testing these days, Black Hills, we're tending to go bottom up now. I mean, the low to own stuff really matters.
Did you say bottom?
Yeah, he did.
We said bottom.
Yep.
We're going bottom up, right?
We go to the router.
Bottom up.
We exploit the bottom.
Bottom.
We work our way up.
Bottom.
That's right.
Way up.
All right. So collectively, how
Anyway.
often, when you guys walk into an environment, how often are you walking in? When you inquire about context, they're able to give you a breakdown and a briefing and help you navigate it. Versus, are you saying, so have you guys considered context? And they're like, what?
So I would say, unfortunately, 20% of the time or less, I would say, people are able to give me a decent context of what they're trying to protect and why certain assets are important or should be high priority to them. It doesn't happen enough times to make me happy.
Mm-hmm. We're fairly often, and we don't always get the full context, and some of that is an active discovery process.
So, if I may interject for a moment, it's not just about context; it's about pillage and pivot, passwords and penetration. So, a pen test properly done can assess risk more accurately through achievement of one compromise, through one vulnerability, and chaining vulnerabilities to do the effective compromise of multiple functionalities, multiple systems, through pivoting, pillaging, passwords, penetration. Like
all the P's.
I know. I love that. It's about PP.
Though I think what you're saying, though, Adrian, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that even if people get a proper context and a proper prioritization in terms of the particular software assets they're trying to protect, and they put that at the high priority list, a good penetration test may still bust through that by pillaging the village, for lack of a better word.
Yes. And context becomes an important thing when you realize that a pen test is different from a vulnerability assessment in that we can do the pillaging, we can do the pivoting, we can do the assessment from a broader perspective, and we can talk about, okay, so I got in here and went over there and got over here, and then I became that other person over there. And from the previous session I talked about, it's all about a compelling story. A good,
I was going to say compelling story.
That's my thing. I say that. It's a compelling story about
you're not alone,
change.
And you use alliteration, so you get some bonus points for that too.
Oh, and Michael, the three things that a good story should have?
Yeah. Paul, what are they?
Penis.
Shit. Boobs.
I was going to say,
olives.
I'm feeling like I can't dispute those, but
a beginning,
Did you
a
see
beginning,
that?
a middle, and an end,
It's
right?
olive.
Is it beginning?
He sucked his olive before he chewed on it.
Is it a protagonist, an antagonist, and a female character? No. Shit.
Why
Love
are
interest.
we talking?
A
why are
love
we talking
interest.
about alliteration all of a sudden?
No, not alliteration, alliteration.
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 There goes those SAT words. So the three things that a good story should have, Michael?
Characters, conflict, resolution.
Characters, conflict, and resolution.
Don't leave the emotion out, especially if you're a pen tester. Don't hype it too much.
Awesome band.
Don't leave the emotion out. Just make sure it's connected to whoever your audience is. So what's their concern, and how do you guide them through to whatever that resolution is in a way that they can connect to the story? If you just give them a chronological listing of facts, it's not a story. It's a chronological listing of facts. And there's no emotion to that. There's no reason to act. It's not exciting.
Well, that's why I think a post-mortem discussion is important.
Completely agree. Yeah.
All right.
And so what I would say is, right, looking at this from a leadership perspective, when you watch these guys that are so good at this talk about it, these are the questions you need to ask of your pen testers. These are the things you need to consider in your own environment. And if that's where you're struggling, then reach out for help, because this is how you advance stuff forward. So in terms of whether you're net 45 days, 60 days, 9 days, whatever, where are you? Can you tell me how long it is, and are you getting better at it? And if not, why?
So hold on, let me sum this up nicely for John. John sounds like he needs to take some SANS training, he needs to do some leadership training, and he needs a penetration test.
Sounds like he's already had a penetration test.
Right? That hits all areas here represented on the show, so it's very self-serving.
It sounds like he's already had a penetration test.
Could be.
It sounds like he's working on the leadership stuff.
He could use another penetration test.
Maybe. Yeah.
And some SANS training.
Well,
good measure.
So it depends if it came from Crappy Pentest Incorporated.
It's true.
Or someone who actually knows what they're doing.
And our other piece of advice, John, is to listen to Startup Security Weekly and Hack Naked News to round out your Security Weekly listening.
Yeah, exactly.
And you're in good shape, dude, right?
So TLDR, there is no one set answer. It's going to be different for every organization. And in fact, some organizations will get worse.
Was there a question in there?
Yes. So we've done a test that we've gone, grabbed the report from the previous year. Everything is the same, and then we added stuff to it.
But you have to remember, to change the dates on the report.
Yes, that's very important.
All right, with that, we're going to take a short break, come back, and discuss the security news for this week. So stay tuned. Don't go anywhere.
Wow.